Today we are going to look at two very important United States court cases, Dartmouth v. Woodward and Fletcher v. Peck. And both of these occurred during the John Marshall Court. And remember that he oversaw a lot of court cases where the power of the federal government expanded at the expense of that of the state government. What made these two court cases extremely important are that they upheld contracts over states' rights. So let's look at our first court case, Fletcher v. Peck, and it all started during the Yazoo land fraud in 1795. And basically there was a corrupt Georgia legislature which sold land at dirt cheap prices to 4 companies. And when the people found out about this corrupt bargain, that a ton of Georgia territory was sold off at dirt cheap prices for very corrupt reasons, they kicked out everyone in the legislature, and they made sure to get their own people up there. And their own people decided to nullify all of these contracts that they sold off to these companies. A bunch of years come along, and Fletcher purchases some land from Peck. And Peck actually was not the original owner of this land in Georgia. He decided he was going to buy it from a bunch of other people, and he decided to sell it as a legitimate contract. He said it was, hey Fletcher, this is a legitimate contract. Fletcher said, wait a sec, the Georgia state legislature actually nullified land sold during the Yazoo land fraud. The property I bought from you is actually not legally owned by me or by you guys. And so he brought them to court. He brought them to the Supreme Court. And when it got to the Supreme Court, John Marshall decided that the validity of a law cannot depend on the motives of its framers. He said, according to, and we'll see this in Dartmouth v. Woodward, the contract clause, Article 10, Section 1, the state governments cannot override existing contracts. So it doesn't matter that the contract is really bad for other people, the contract cannot be overridden. It's written in stone. And although Fletcher v. Peck did not work out in the sense it upheld actually really scandalous legislation, it served a very important purpose, and we'll talk about that in a second. But next, we'll come to another court case, Dartmouth v. Woodward. And this is actually a very good result. It started out kind of struggle between the state government and a private school. And Dartmouth College was established as a private school in 1769 as one of America's oldest schools and oldest institution for learning. The state government of New Hampshire decided that, hey, we want a state school, we want a public school, let's overrule the Board of Trustees. Now keep in mind that when the Dartmouth College contract was established, it was established as a charter with the King of England before the Revolution. It was an existing contract already, actually before the American government was even formed. And the state of New Hampshire decided to put its own people on the Board of Trustees, and of course that made the actual trustees that were currently there very mad. And they were like, hey, we want to stay private, we want to stay a private institution, we don't want the state government taking everything over. And Daniel Webster, actually a very famous senator, we'll hear a lot more about him later in U.S. history. Right now, he just came out of the U.S. House of Representatives, and he decided that he was going to represent his alma mater, Dartmouth College. He argued that according to the contract clause of the U.S. Constitution, state governments cannot override existing contracts. And John Marshall actually affirmed this position. Dartmouth College today is still a private institution. What do these two court cases have in common? Well, not only did they uphold contracts and make sure that the state government made sure laws stayed intact, it also made sure that the federal government could actually overrule and declare a state law unconstitutional. Just like how the federal government asserted its power a lot during the Marshall Court, this is one of the ways it did it. It made sure that state laws that were unconstitutional were going to be determined that way by the federal government. States did not have that much independence. And Fletcher v. Peck and Dartmouth v. Woodward are things that you need to know for the AP test and for the SAT2 history, US history test. And what they will ask you are what two court cases are very similar. Maybe you'll get a question on the actual AP exam that will ask you what court cases made it so that the federal government could override unconstitutional state laws, state legislation. And you'll see Dartmouth v. Woodward and Fletcher v. Peck, and remember that these court cases affirmed the power of the United States government. And what's very important about this, there you may see there's kind of a debate on it where you may see some negative things about this. A lot of people were getting away with squeezing out of their debts with European countries and getting their states to back them, saying, hey, you don't really need to pay off your debts. It's okay. The federal government, even though that wasn't a part of these two court cases, these court cases made sure that the constitutional clause, contract clause, Article 10, Section 1, people couldn't back out of their contracts, even if the state decided that the contracts could be overruled. Thank you very much for hanging out with me for this episode of Journey with Jacob, Power Packed History. We're going to bring a lot more to this channel. I'm going to go away from my vlogs and actually make some good history content. I think that there are a lot of topics not well discussed here on YouTube, and not discussed in a little period of time. Alright, so thanks again for checking out this episode of Power Packed History, and please be sure to watch the next lecture video where Professor Mahlum will discuss America's preparation for World War I.